Ladies and gentlemen, welcome pro-life Spiderman, Maison Deschamps. Woo! Oh boy, we got some fun to talk about. We're going to have a conversation, so let's go ahead and grab a seat. So, you are either the bravest person I've ever met, or the craziest, or maybe a little of each. But I want to go back before that, and I want us to talk about how did you first get started climbing in the first place?
Yeah, I guess I'm not that brave. I'm actually more nervous of public speaking than I am climbing buildings. But yeah, you know, I grew up in Michigan, and anyone here, if they're from Michigan, they know that Michiganders like to hunt and they like to fish, and so that's what I grew up doing. I grew up in the outdoors, and when I was 16, my dad, he got a new job in California, so we packed up and moved from a small little farm town out to Los Angeles, and there's not a lot of hunting in LA, so I had to find something else to do, and rock climbing was just that.
Okay, so you get started climbing rocks. This is a little different than a rock. So what did you do to make the leap from rock climbing to, say, skyscraper climbing?
Yeah, so I actually stole the idea from a guy named Alain Robert, and Alain is known as the French Spiderman. And back in the 90s, he was climbing skyscrapers all over the country. And he actually climbed the Sears Tower back in 1999. But in 2008, I saw him climb a building, the New York Times building, and he did it to protest climate change. And I thought that was really cool. And so I was thinking to myself, you know, it'd be cool if we had something like that for the conservative movement, some kind of radical protest. And they always say that politics are downstream of culture, so how do you engage the culture? You have to join it. And so I was sitting at home, and I'd wanted to do it forever, but it's just crazy idea, and so I just didn't do it. And then finally, I was on Instagram one day, and I saw the photos of the Justice for the 5 babies. And these were babies that were found outside of an abortion clinic in Washington, D.C. Some friends of mine, they saw a delivery truck driver pull up, and he was a medical waste delivery truck, and they asked the guy if they could take one of the boxes home. And the truck driver reluctantly gave him the boxes, and inside were 115 image-bearing children of God, 5 of which were almost 9-month-old babies, full-term children who were killed in what's believed to be a partial birth abortion. So when I saw these photos, I just couldn't help but be convicted. You know, we say it so often, like, abortion is murder, but here it is in front of us, and, you know, this doctor isn't facing any legal consequences. He's still walking around free, doing abortions, and I guess it gets into, you know, the saying, if abortion is murder, then we need to act like it, and we need to treat it like what it is, and we need to go out and try to do things to stop it.
So you decided to, from this inspiration, climb for a cause, specifically the pro-life cause. So walk us through some of the early climbs. What was that like? And also just some of the memorable experiences you've had. Because I'm in my mind thinking, it's great to say I want to do some radical protest for a cause. It's a whole nother thing to climb up a skyscraper.
Yeah, so the first building I went to go climb was the Salesforce Tower in San Francisco. That was the one that you guys watched right over here. And I had to raise the money to pay all the photographers and to be able to pay for the hotels and everything, and I did that, and I bought the tickets probably about a month in advance. And the morning I woke up to fly out to San Francisco was the morning that the Roe v. Wade draft was leaked. And so when I climbed the building, it just spread all over the news. It was wild, and it was kind of strange, though. When I was headed out there, I had never actually been and seen the Salesforce Tower, so I didn't actually know if it was climbable. And so that was my biggest fear, was I was going to get there and then be like, sorry guys, we got to go somewhere else. But yeah, you know, it's really strange climbing the buildings. I tell people, because they always ask me, like, what does it feel like? What does it feel like? And if you take the technical aspect of climbing out of it, it feels like you're playing Grand Theft Auto in real life, because you have helicopters flying everywhere and the police are there and, you know, everyone's watching you. 5 stars.
So, well, that's a great way to look at it. So when we talked on the Zoom call, you told me that rock climbing versus skyscraper climbing, there were some differences. Can you compare and contrast those, just technically?
Yeah, so rock climbing and climbing skyscrapers are very different. It's the same in the sense that the training translates over. But when you're out on rock, your gripping holds the size of credit cards. Where on the skyscraper, I'm able to get my hands around most everything for the most part. So, the ones I've done haven't been that bad, with the exception of the Chase Tower. And the Chase Tower was one I did in Arizona. And you use a technique called stemming. So you basically take your hands and feet on one side, and then your right hands and your right feet on the other, and you press against the wall, and you just scooch up all the way. And that technique isn't that hard, but it takes a lot of endurance and a lot of muscle. So I got to the top, and my legs were getting a little shaky, and you just have to compose yourself the entire time, though, and keep your cool. And people always ask me, like, do I get scared? And I think fear is the wrong term, because fear implies lack of faith. Like, there is that sort of human emotion that happens if your feet slip or something like that, where you go, whoa. But fear is what happens after that. And I always like to go back to the Bible, and one of my favorite Bible verses is Mark 4:40. And you have Jesus and the apostles, they're crossing the Sea of Galilee, and there's this huge storm that's happening, right? And all the apostles, they're terrified. So they run down into the bottom of the boat where Jesus was sleeping, and they wake him up, and he snaps his fingers. That's how I figure it. I don't know if he actually does. But he stops the storm, and he says to the apostles, "Why are ye so fearful? Have ye no faith?" And so we see very clearly, like, fear is this opposite of faith. And so when I'm up there and I have those moments where I go, whoa, I just stop and I remember why I'm doing what I'm doing. And I think back to those babies who were found in those boxes. And then I think back on the babies like we see in this video. And I remember, like, we're here and doing these things to save these children so that they don't need to be found in boxes.
So for you, climbing is something that you love and you were doing before you started climbing buildings, and then you brought your passion after seeing the 5 from Washington, D.C. into the pro-life cause. How do you combine the two? How do you take the message of life and present it to the public rather than people just saying, who's that guy climbing the building? Like, how do you bring that message forward?
Yeah, so when I climb, if there's a building that I can hang a banner off of, I love hanging banners. So, like, I climbed the New York Times building back in May, and I hung all these banners on the side. Like, one of them was actually a photo of one of the Justice for the 5 babies. And so I try to do that, but the best way I spread the message is by going on TV. And as you guys saw in the video, these climbs generate an enormous amount of press. And so I use that press to talk about the pro-life movement and to raise money for women in crisis pregnancy like we're doing tonight. But, the climbing itself is just the vessel to get people to listen. Because if you're just going out with a sort of pro-life message, a lot of people are going to ignore you. But if you climb a skyscraper,
They'll pay a little bit more attention.
Oh, yeah.
Well, a lesson I want all of us to draw from Mason's experience here is he's using his gifts, his passions, his talents, and tying it to the critical issue of our day, the issue of life. And we may not get our message out the same way he gets his message out. I'm certainly not going to. But we still have an obligation to get this message out. So tell me, as the public hears about this, I've read through some of your social media comments, and it gets some really lively discussions going. But what kind of impact have you seen this have? Not just, I'm on TV, I'm talking about it, but have you ever seen this actually reach somebody at a time of need or make a real profound impact?
Yeah, so for like the last few weeks, I've been trying to build up my TikTok. They keep taking my videos off. It's really funny. But since I started going on TikTok, I've had a number of women message me saying that they saw my video on TikTok and they were thinking about having an abortion, but they seen it as this sort of sign. And so I try to talk them out of it, and I refer them to places like TLC, and I say, you know what, go to the pregnancy center and then decide. But, that's sort of like, I think one of the blessings of what I get to do is that it's able to reach all of these people. But I think the biggest thing I want people to get out of what I do And when I started this project, I was going really soft, and I was trying to soften what I do, thinking that I could get into places and raise more money, and I wouldn't scare people from working with me. I'd be like, oh, it's not that bad, climbing it's easy, it's not a big deal. But sometimes it is a big deal. Like the Chase Tower, it's hard. I've had times where the feet were kind of crumbling under me on the concrete, and you just have to stay with it and stay brave. But we have to remember in these scary moments that our lives have been paid for already. Jesus died for us, so why are we scared if we're told that those who are persecuted are going to heaven, and those who are facing all of these, all this suffering, the suffering will end? Why are we scared of suffering if our lives have already been bought? And I guess that's what I want people to take from this.
So Scripture's pretty clear about we're called to rescue those being led to the slaughter. We are called to speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves. And at least in my translation of the Bible, it doesn't say unless it's uncomfortable or politically incorrect. It doesn't say that. Maybe it does in some other translations. But when you have done this, certainly you take flack in social media. You certainly take flack in some media hits on this. How have your family and closest friends and people nearest to you, how have they reacted?
Yeah, so my family is actually very liberal. They voted for Joe Biden. So Mama ain't too happy, I'll just say that. But, it's the sort of thing, like if you want to honor your mother and father, what better way to do it than serving the Lord? And so I just try to be a good witness to them. And as far as the friends go, and you look at the climbing community, and the climbing community is just so liberal. And so I've been really ostracized by them. It's really hard to find climbing partners now, and sort of in the valley, I'm scared to show my face in Yosemite Valley. I go there all summer. I've been there every summer since I was 18, and it doesn't feel like home anymore. I have to say that. But, again, you look towards the Bible for strength. It says you shake the dust off your boots, and you look towards the Word for that sort of courage.
So you shake the dust from Chase Tower off your boots and you keep moving on to the next tower. Okay.
Exactly.
Now we understand. So when I think about what you have been doing, the impact it's had, I also think for all of us, we have different callings. So I'm willing to suspect that there are not too many others in this room who are going to go climb the Sears Tower with you when you do that. And I know we've talked about that's going to be on the horizon.
There's a sign-up sheet at the front.
All right, so everybody now, see, you said you're on your own in the climbing community. You could have new friends here after tonight. For the rest of us who may say, that's not my thing, what would you say about how do we find our thing, and how do we make sure that the work of TLC, Pregnancy Services, and other parts of the pro-life movement right here in Illinois, in the Chicagoland area, can flourish and we can be a part of that?
Yeah, like I said, the saying is abortion is murder. And if abortion is murder, then we need to act like it. If we're going to say something and believe what we say, then we have to act on that. And you take a place like TLC, and they are in need of funding. In order to do what they're doing, they need help. And so I just say to everybody at home, just treat abortion like what it is, and then decide what you can do. And not everybody can climb skyscrapers, but everybody can help a pregnancy center. Everybody can speak out in their community and just get the word out that places like TLC exist and that women can go there and get the help that they need.
I was talking to Phil Price, drove me around today, and he runs the 40 Days for Life in Aurora, Illinois. And Phil and I were talking on the drive today, and I was reflecting to him a number of years ago, a good friend of mine, a former abortionist named Dr. Haywood Robinson, he was serving on the board of a pregnancy center in Texas. And he was really frustrated with his fellow board members because he was trying to encourage them to take a bolder stance. And they were kind of like you earlier, they were taking this very kind of soft pedal approach. And Haywood finally confronted them and he says, I know how bad this is because I used to pull the legs and the arms off of these children during the abortions. He says, you don't know how bad it is. When you do, you're going to start acting like you believe that. And I just thought for all of us, it's easy to kind of distance abortion. It's just off in the distance. It's a Supreme Court debate. It's something we talk about on Sanctity of Life Sunday. But when we realize that right here in this area, within an hour of us, 65 children will die tomorrow, 65 women will be wounded tomorrow, we have an obligation to be a voice for those who have no voice. Maybe it's not climbing skyscrapers, but each of us have a role, and TLC is a wonderful vehicle for each of us to have an impact right here where we live. As we begin to start wrapping this up, Mason, I know as a believer, you have a deep, profound faith, as you talked about, over fear. What message would you have to the church, to clergy, to those of us who are the many parts of the body of Christ? What would you say to us in this moment that we're living in, where there's so much darkness that has covered our land? How can we bring the light of Christ to this situation?
Yeah, I would say, just believe the words that you say. And if we do believe abortion is murder, then over 70 million babies have been killed since Roe v. Wade. That is the largest Holocaust in history. Yet, we're sitting at home, so we don't see what's happening. Like you were saying, we don't see these babies get killed. Unlike the Holocaust in Germany, where you watch the Jews get ripped from homes, you watch the smoke going out the chimneys, these babies get thrown in the trash before they even get a name. And so I just would hope that the church would get more involved, and you as Christians who are here tonight, just encourage your church to get active, to support places like TLC, go out in front of the abortion clinics, to Sidewalk Council, and treat this like the Holocaust that it is. Because these babies, their lives depend on it, and like Proverbs 24 says, we're called to rescue those who are being led to death. So we just have to do that.
So final question. Obviously, you're going to continue to do this. We're not going to talk you out of the work that you do.
I can't make any promises. My lawyer told me not to comment.
All right, and I know you're a lawyer, so I know it would be difficult if I got you to comment on that one. So how can we, let's just put it this way, how can we be praying for you as you proceed in the ministry that God has uniquely called and tasked you to do?
Yeah, just pray that God keeps blessing me, keeping me in the Word. But pray for the babies, and pray for the nation as a whole, that we can make an impact and we can make a difference, because this really is one of the worst things that America has ever done. So keep the women and keep the children in your prayers.
Can we please give a round of applause to pro-life Spider-Man, Mason Deschamps?